this is perfect timing because I did not expect this GloRilla situation. And I just made a video, stay tuned for that, about what happens when you separate from family members for a certain reason. And then here we have this video where GloRilla's, in my opinion, very raggedy Brister, Brister, I guess, is basically calling GloRilla out for abandoning her mother. And since GloRilla is grown, I'm gonna guess that her mother is slightly elderly. So wow, I wasn't gonna post this video until maybe a week or two out because I just typically don't have a lot of time, but I'm gonna go ahead and post it now. And go ahead and watch ahead because I've got some answers, and I bet you if GloRilla watched this video, tag her, she would probably be like, how do you do this? To a good 5 or 6 of these answers that I have as to why adult children would seemingly abandon their elderly parents. So stay tuned, stay ahead. Answers coming in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Yeah. This is for the women who built it anyway. No permission, no apology. I've been quiet, I've been watching. Let them talk, I keep it polished. Single mama, still exotic. Pressure made me this iconic. I don't chase, I align. Every loss was divine. I don't beg, I decide. Handle mine every time. I set the tone when I enter. Peace is the prize I protect her. If it don't serve, I release it. Boundaries sharp, but they gentle. I'm rooted, rebuild this, reclaim. Still rising, still sane. I speak the room, rearrange. This is power with a name. Darling Nikki, remember, I don't break, I transcend. Every scar got a lesson. Every loss made a legend. Darling Nikki, remember, I don't break, I transcend. Every scar got a lesson. Every loss made a legend. That's darling Nikki. That's darling Nikki.
Hey, so I was at a department store doing some shopping for someone that I'm caring for that's currently in the hospital. And the cashier and I had a little bit of small talk, and I probably mentioned it. Plus, you can tell by some of the things that I was getting that I was putting together a care package. And so the cashier decided to tell me a bit of a story. He really wanted to share with me about his mother who passed away in 80-something, like 1980-something, and how she had a stroke and he was the only sibling that was there for her. Stay with me, I swear I'm going somewhere good with this. But he talked about how he was the only sibling, and he seemed to be really proud of himself that stuck around, that cared for her, that the other siblings didn't seem to too much care for her. And it seemed like he was really trying to get some sympathy and praise for being there. And there was a little bit of maybe resentment for the other siblings who just, in his words, didn't care enough to be there for her and to even be there toward the end of her life care and all that. And it was just him. And this may sound kind of weird or maybe even callous, but I couldn't find any sympathy to give him. I just listened to the facts, and I kept trying to make these gestures as in I gotta go, and tried to find a way to just kind of quickly end the conversation, and said, wow, that's really something that you experienced. That must have been a lot. And then I just left. Then I thought about it later, and I thought about how many times I've seen people kind of make themselves a martyr and seem to be really proud of that, and talk about how they were the only one that stayed. They were the only one that took care of their parents. Other people didn't care. And I've certainly have had countless elderly people either say to me directly or heard about their stories and how they would really complain and be upset about, younger people in the family just not caring about them anymore and abandoning them. And from my own personal experience directly, and then indirectly, like growing up in the church and other things and seeing so many family systems, I don't tend to sympathize with that elderly person who was seemingly abandoned, and I don't tend to really get emotionally entangled in that situation, and here's why. So I just decided to kind of go to ChatGPT with this question because I couldn't really find the words to express what I feel and what I also know about it. And I think this is a conversation that needs to be had more because I've never been the one to really go. So I got cut off. But when it comes to these type of conversations, and really any conversations when you're going deep, I've never been the one that just likes to repeat these things that just sound nice or that everybody says just because it's something that you're used to saying. So I've never been the one to just be like, oh, I'm sorry you went through that, and that's fine if that's you, but that's just not me. I think about things, and especially when it comes to family dynamics and stuff, and I don't have a lot of cares to give because I understand the backstory behind these adults that decided, these adult children that decided, I don't want much to do with the parents. So I went ahead and asked the question. I went to ChatGPT and I just said, a guy at Target was just telling me about his story. And then I just ended the question with, what are the most common reasons why adult children would abandon their elder parents? So here we go. So this is the answer that I got. There are several well-documented common reasons that adult children disengage from or fully abandon aging parents. What's important is this. Absence is rarely about laziness alone. It's usually the outcome of long-standing relational, psychological, or structural dynamics. So let's go ahead and break that down a little bit more. So number 1 is history of abuse, neglect, or harm. Number 2 is parentification and burnout. Number 3 is unequal family roles, scapegoat versus golden child. I know all about that because I've been the scapegoat child. Number 4 is estrangement due to unrepaired conflict. Number 5 is emotional immaturity of the parent. 6 is cultural and gendered expectations. 7 is geographic, financial, or capacity limits. 8 is loyalty conflicts or new family systems. 9 is unprocessed grief or anticipatory loss. 10 is moral injury, the feeling of you are supposed to protect me. And so now I'm just going to kind of break down a little bit more of those 10. So hold on, let me stop here before I get into all that. So number 1, a lot of adult children, this is a number 1 reason, decide to disengage from their elderly parents, not care for them in their later years. And so the general public really loves to look at them and just make it seem like they're some ungrateful, bratty child. But here's the reality, and here's the most common truth behind why. And if you really just decide to be woke, it's not a bad word. It means stop sleeping, and it means actually engage your brain and think about this, because that's a really serious thing. Why would a child decide, I don't want much to do with the parent? Here's the number 1 reason: a history of abuse, neglect, or harm. So the single most common reason, again, even when it's not openly stated, is that adult child likely had a history of physical, emotional, psychological, or smexual, because you can't say the word sex anymore online, abuse. They likely had a history of chronic neglect, abandonment during childhood. The parent may have protected an abuser or denied that harm occurred. So it could be that one of the parents was an abuser, or one of the parents protected an abuser, and that's one and the same. It could have been that they had a parent or parents who would gaslight them a lot. You're too sensitive, or why are you so depressed? What are you always so upset about? You don't have any real problems, or, oh, you think your life was bad, mine was worse. All of that is harmful, abusive, neglectful behavior. So many adult children would decide to disengage in order to survive, not to necessarily punish their parent, but that so they themselves can just survive. Going back would be going back to harm. So number 2 is parentification and burnout. One child, if it's just maybe one child that's just not dealing with the parent anymore, it could also be because they have become the default caregiver earlier in life. So they're tired. They're done. It's that oldest child syndrome. Oftentimes, oldest children were forced to help raise their siblings and also forced to help manage adult emotions, or maybe not even forced, but just kind of it was implied. So after a long-term imbalance like that, and if there was no help to kind of to correct some of those things, and especially if there was no reciprocity, that they're doing the caregiving for the parents, but the parents actually not providing that for them, then hello, what's going to happen if you continue pouring, you're not getting poured into? You're done. You're done. So that's what that is. So reason number 3, an unequal family role. Scapegoat versus golden child. I was always given the role of scapegoat, so I understand that very well. If one child is expected to always handle everything, if others were in favor, I'll give you an example of this. I was a scapegoat child. I remember my grandfather on his deathbed, and I got to be honest, it was very difficult for me to even go and visit with him then, because although he's got a really stellar reputation, we didn't have a personal relationship with each other. It just is what it is. But for myself, I wanted to go and see him one last time and just see what he had to say. And his very last thing that he said to me shortly before he did pass in that hospital was, we always knew you were going to be all right. No matter what, Coley Boo, you were always going to be okay. I had to take care of your other, cousins because they couldn't make it on their own. But you always find a way. Well, that's not true. I learned early on in life that I can't depend on none of y'all. So I had to always find a way. I had to always be self-sufficient. Maybe because I was the oldest child, I don't know. I learned that my problems were just mine alone, and it made me have to put on a cape. That wasn't healthy. That wasn't okay. If you have a history of being treated a certain way that was different than your cousins, different than your siblings, seeing them get more support and everything else, and you were struggling, after a while, that sets a precedent for that relationship. So, those conditions are obviously going to create a long-term relationship that eventually the chickens are going to come home to roost. So the next one is number 4. Estrangement can be due to unrepaired conflict. I think this kind of goes across the board with all the different kind of conflicts. And to me, I feel like this should be number 1 reason, but it is not. It's actually the 4th reason. So not all estrangements are dramatic. They're not all, just these big fights and we had this big blowout. I would venture to say that many of them really are quiet and unresolved because of no accountability for past harm, because of refusal to apologize or change, people refusing to acknowledge things, repeated boundary violations, a chronic habit of being criticized or controlled by people, oftentimes distance, is the only way that you can be able to have any type of boundary with that type of history. I said distory. So you need distance from that history. Distory. That's your new vocab word for the day. So number 5, emotional immaturity of the parents. I also kind of feel like this should be higher on the list, but it is what it is. So the number 5 reason is emotional immaturity of the parent. Let me stop here for a sec. So in terms of emotional immaturity of the parents, some parents will just get older. That's it. They will age. They will get older. That does not mean that because you get older that you grow up. We all know this. Age does not equal emotional growth. So when you're dealing with parents who get older but don't grow up, they will expect unconditional care, but they will never give it. They will expect unconditional acceptance and other things that they are either incapable of giving or they refuse to give. Who knows? But not your problem. You just know that this is something that they want to take. It's something that they don't give. These type of parents who are emotionally immature, they have a history of treating their children, including their adult children, as extensions of themselves and not actual individuals. They oftentimes will also compete with and undermine their adult children. It's a sick type of way of thinking and of way of being. And also they will use guilt and manipulation to continue to control their children. So oftentimes the adult children of parents who are emotionally immature, they're going to opt out because every time that they have a interaction with them, it literally re-traumatizes them. So it's not that they're just, again, some bratty child or some evil child who's just decided to abandon. Again, when you decide to abandon certain relationships, think about this. There's a reason, and there's a valid reason. So let's go to number 6, cultural and gendered expectations. Caregiving, oftentimes, as we know, in this patriarchal society, it typically falls on daughters, and especially daughters who may not be married, who may not have children. Then they're somehow seen as even more available to give their service. They're seen as more available to provide service that is, what's the word I'm looking for? Uncompensated as well. And they're supposed to be seen as someone who's more strong, more responsible, more capable. And we know that's a bunch of bullshit. That is that is feculence that those parents can devour. Devour feculence. And then when you have that type of dynamic, other siblings automatically will feel entitled to just opt out. Oh, that's not my place. That's beneath me. I'm not a woman. I'm not a servant. Or I have 4 kids and this person has none. So that means they're more available. So there's those type of biases as well. And again, these are things that you just can't fix. You cannot force other people to change, evolve, see your point of view. You get to a point to where you're like, I can't change this, and I also can't abide by this. I can't live with this, and that's valid. So again, you get to a point to where you're like, okay, I can't live with this, and so I'm out, and that's valid. So let's go to number 7, geographic, financial, or capacity limits. And this is really sad. I've had friends who were first or second generation in this country, and they just couldn't see their parents anymore because they couldn't afford to go back to wherever they were from, or they live too far away, or they can only do it once a year, every couple of years. Sometimes you're stuck in these work schedules, or poverty is a really, really big boundary. The poverty tax, it affects every part of your life, unfortunately, including your relationships, and even relationships that, you may love and hold dear. It definitely puts a boundary in it. That's my sensory seeking son. Say hi, Lawson. Wave your hand.
Hi.
All right. And then also mental health limitations. So unfortunately, that can be a barrier as well. And, people who have these barriers, for whatever it is, they don't owe anyone an explanation. They don't have to tell you why they're not there. So again, before you decide to make an ASS out of yourself, which is by making assumptions, I think that's why the word starts with the word ass, because you look like an asshole when you make them without having any of the facts. Consider these reasons. So number 8, loyalty, conflicts, or new family systems. Adult children may prioritize spouses. Sometimes their spouse may resent that parent. Oftentimes, if the spouse knows that there is a history of abuse and neglect, that spouse is probably not going to like the parent and probably going to advocate for their spouse to stay the hell away. I definitely had that with the first spouse. He definitely tried to advocate for me to have more distance and space because he was very aware of my family history. Also, new family norms, self-preservation. You may have other obligations that are first, and that is your rights, your children and other things like that. You get to choose what your priorities are and what they're not. So and if you have the extra challenge of these are my priorities and the parent is not respecting those boundaries, or if they're disrupting them. And I've also seen that play out as well within my own family, where one grandparent says to their child, well, who came first, the chicken or the egg? I'm your mom, that's your husband, and so I'm supposed to come first. When they make it difficult like that, and they try to get you to they make you choose between your own household and them as the parent and things like that, that also is going to put a strain on your relationship. And typically when you put those type of ultimatums on people, you're going to lose. So the parent loses. Number 9 is unprocessed grief or anticipatory loss. Some people will avoid. So I got a phone call, and then I had to go leave and take care of some important family business. So it's the next day. Hi, let's go back to number 9. Let's wrap this up. Number 9 was unprocessed grief or anticipatory loss. Some people will avoid dying parents or aging parents because they just cannot bear to face mortality. They may associate that parent with unresolved pain. They may emotionally shut down under that amount of stress. With or without any type of unresolved pain or trauma, just the fact of having to face your parents' mortality, and it also perhaps making you have to face your own mortality, that type of emotional weight, it can be very intrusive. It could be very debilitating. Everybody doesn't handle their emotions and their stress the same. And so it could seem like they're being selfish, and perhaps you could call it selfish because you got to take care of yourself first. That could be too heavy of a weight for someone to press forward. I remember almost not going to that grandfather I told you about, almost not going to his funeral because I don't really do funerals. I just don't. I've got to have a really, really big reason to go, and typically it's not going to be for the person who's dead because they're dead. I'm not going for that person. They're dead. They can't see me there. I kind of feel like I don't have to go tell you goodbye if we had a great life together. Like my aunt, when my aunt passed away, she had a memorial service. She was cremated, so it wasn't a traditional funeral. I did not go to the funeral. Number one, she wasn't there. Number two, I actually had a chance to tell her goodbye. Now, I did not know that was going to be my last time ever saying goodbye, but we had a great relationship. I loved her a lot. I gave her as much as I could. I was emotionally present for her as much as I could over the last years of her life. We talked almost every single day. And every time before we hung up the phone, she would say, I love you, Coley Boo. And I would say, I love you so much, Auntie Shar, or whatever. I would say, I love you and bye. So I already had that chance. I was totally at peace. I didn't need to go. And then a lot of the family, I don't fuck with them. So it's not like it wouldn't be genuine. It would be performative if I went to be there in support of them, and they for damn sure weren't going to be in support of me. Like I had my own, grief. I dealt with it on my own. I didn't need to be with them people. They didn't need me to be there either. We don't fool with each other. There was no need for me to go to the funeral. So some people decide they don't want to deal with that part of death. They don't want to deal with the before. They don't want to, and that's okay. And that's a personal decision. That's between you and that person who's passing or passed on. And that's that. So number 10, we're almost done. Hey, number 10 is moral injury. Having the feeling of you were supposed to protect me, and it ties into a lot of the other reasons. So number 10, again, is having a sense of a moral injury, having to go and face my parents' mortality, having to deal with them in the last parts of their life, the emotional toll, the physical work, all that stuff, you having to be there to take care of, maybe even protect your parent in a certain kind of way. If you felt like that parent was supposed to protect you and be there for you, you may decide, no, I'm disengaging from all this, because why am I going to do all this for them when I don't feel like they did that for me? If you feel like that parent knew better, they knew better and still decided to fail you, hurt you, whatever, in that kind of way. If you felt like that parent knew they had choices and they made a choice not to protect me, if that parent decided and made a decision, you feel, to fail you in a way that has really impacted your entire life, then going there and to care for them, to provide care, comfort, nurturing, that could feel like a really big injustice. And that could feel like, why am I going to reward them? Why am I going to reward them for their terrible behavior toward me? I don't think so. And that's valid. And so again, there's so many reasons from the outside where someone, especially a person who doesn't think that critically or think deeply, or a person who's quick to, or prone to just kind of judge off of what they think they know, it can make you look like, again, a child who is just bad, the bad seed some kind of way. But there's always a story. There's always things under the surface. And those are the reasons why. And this list of the 10 reasons, these are the reasons why. You got to remember, there's a saying about women and men in relationships. I've never seen a woman run from a good man. Well, that can apply when it comes to parents and children, even adult children. I have rarely seen a child run from a good parent. It doesn't matter if that parent was rich and they gave them the world, the sun and the moon, and they gave them the great life. Who was that parent? Who were they as a human being? Only the child can answer that question. It's that child that had to live with that person. And it goes beyond just you giving them the things that the government says you have to give them, and even giving them more than that if you had the financial ability to do so. So that's it. Those are the reasons. Tying it back to the story, when that cashier said what he said, you know, and he was so proud of himself that he was the only child that was there for the parent. It could just be because that child was, you know, so emotionally enmeshed with that parent. Didn't matter what that parent did. They were going to, you know, eat 10 miles. He may have ate 20 miles of his mother's crap. For all we know, she could have been a very abusive, narcissistic, you know, pick me behind woman. And that's why the other kids didn't want anything to do with her. And if I had to wager, if we were to place bets, I would confidently place a really big wager on the fact that that mother may have been a narcissistic, terrible woman to her children, and that's why only one of them showed up. And if that's the case, she was fortunate to have that one. All right. Take care. I'm Darling Nikki. AskDarlingNikki.com. I have these conversations. I discuss solutions to people who have had to experience these things firsthand, people who decide to go low or no contact and just heal, like me. I'm also obviously a content creator. I also offer services primarily for single mothers who've come out of abusive situations. I like to equip families with legal services, especially now in today's world. I think every person, every household, every family, every mother should have their own law firm that's in their pocket 24/7 on call and super affordable. And I'm happy to provide that. Also providing ways for women to earn money on their own by providing that service and other things. I am a singer. I'm a background actor. And if you're here, thank you. If you've been here for a while, super thank you. And that's it. Bye-bye.
Maybe the night that my trees might let me know all the stars are motion, all the stars are motion, all the stars are motion. Maybe the night that my trees might let me know.
Yeah. This is for the women who built it anyway. No permission, no apology. I've been quiet, I've been watching. Let them talk, I keep it polished. Single mama, still exotic. Pressure made me this iconic. I don't chase, I align. Every loss was divine. I don't beg, I decide. Handle mine every time. I set the tone when I enter. Peace is the prize I protect her. If it don't serve, I release it. Boundaries sharp, but they gentle. I'm rooted, rebellious, reclaim. Still rising, still sane. I speak the room, rearrange. This is power with a name. Darling Nikki, remember, I don't break, I transcend. Every scar got a lesson. Every loss made a legend. Darling Nikki, remember, I don't break, I transcend. Every scar got a lesson. Every loss made a legend. That's Darling Nikki.